crypto AI is an area that I think people will still be underexposed to, no matter how bullish they are.
Wow.
I know people have been posting the pump.fund chart of how many coins are minted. I promise you that's gonna go back up. It's not going to zero. Celestia is a great example where it had that crazy run up to $20, and then as soon as it's done, people are like, all right, yeah, that tech sucks. It's dude, they didn't really even fucking start yet. I hate that people hate speculation. You're in crypto and you've benefited off that speculation, and now you're on your high horse. Grandparents and stuff like that, they'll play the casino where their odds are 1 in a billion. Crypto casino, as far as these meme coin trenches and stuff, there you can say, hey, instead of me having a 1 in a billion chance, maybe I have 1 in 1,000.
How do you think a retail investor should think about getting exposure to the AI space?
That's a good question. I think there's...
Awesome. Well, we're here today with a longtime builder across a ton of verticals in crypto, and honored to have him here. Who are you and what do you do?
Nice. Yeah, it's a broad question, but yeah, my name is Anil. I'm CEO of Delphi. We do a lot, mostly focused on the research and venture side of Delphi, but the Delphi that everyone knows of today has Delphi Research, Delphi Ventures, Delphi Labs. We can kind of get into all three throughout the conversation. But, at a high level, Delphi Ventures, we invest prop capital into projects and teams that we're super bullish on, excited about. Delphi Labs, we incubate ideas that we, think are needed in the space. And then Delphi Research kind of has a lot of different buckets kind of under it. But main side, we sell research a lot of the big funds as well as a lot of builders in the space. And then, we do consulting and actually help and work with probably 10 to 15 teams every year, which has been a lot of fun. Then, recently we actually, a small team at Delphi started Delphi Design, which is also division that I'm super excited about, where we actually work on UI, UX, branding.
Oh, interesting.
And stuff
you mentioned it before we started chatting on, recording, but I was curious because I hadn't heard of it. So yeah, what are you guys doing in that?
Yeah, so, our designers, I wonder how transparent I should be about this, but essentially, at the end of 2023, our designers had worked on a ton of shit at Delphi, right? Basically worked on the whole portal, the whole portal redesign, obviously refreshed the brand and everything like that, but also worked on some of the Delphi Labs incubations like Mars, Astroport, and things like that. Now, at the end of 2023, they had basically completed that work. We had a, pretty big design team, and my CEO, Rashmi, who's my better half for sure in a lot of different ways, I'd say I'm a very good hirer. I love hiring people, but I'm not that good at letting people go or anything. But she rationally came to me and said, "Hey, listen, design team's pretty good. We, I know we love this team and everything like that. But realistically, what are we doing here?"
Right.
And essentially, our head of design, Thax, he's not one of my favorite people to work with, not just because he's an amazing designer, but because he's so product oriented and he just thinks so out of the box. And I think any of our clients who have worked with him will echo that very very kind of bigly. Essentially, I hopped on a call with him and was just hey, listen, what do you want to do in life? You've kind of been the lead of this big design team within Delphi working on what we're doing, but what was your kind of MO before you kind of found us? And obviously he loves working at Delphi and everything like that. But one of the things he kind of immediately said was before finding you guys, my goal in life was to start my own design agency. And essentially what I told him was hey, why not just build that under us? Obviously give him a ton of ownership as well as the team. And, for him, the math was basically, can this be, 2 to 3x bigger if he just built it under Delphi with our resources and everything like that? And it was kind of a no-brainer. And I think that is a really good example. It's very similar to kind of the lab story as well. Jose and Luke's came in and were helping us on the research and venture side. And essentially, I think what's really cool about how we're structured is because we have no outside investors, we can kind of take weird bets, weird directions, do things that probably don't make any sense from the outside looking in. But at the end of the day, it's kind of empowering the people that, trust us and work on the team with us and let them kind of have ownership in building this out under Delphi and kind of within the hive mind in general, which is what we refer to the team at large. So it's cool because that's been going really well. They just started, basically in March of last year. And already in January, they've surpassed the revenue they did last year.
Oh, wow.
And so, you've started to see this huge inflection point. I think one of my favorite things about that, too, is, on the Delphi consulting side, obviously, we've become well-known for our work with, a lot of the stuff that we did early in DeFi with, synthetics, Aave, Lido, and stuff like that, as well as, obviously Axie Infinity, but a lot of that stuff is very like intangible, I'd say. Like you don't know exactly where Delphi touched it or how we did it, what our opinions were and everything like that. Whereas on design side, it's so tangible. You can kind of see that. So what I'm excited about, and I don't know how much I can share that without Dax getting mad at me, but a lot of the work that he's been doing that is going to be rolling out in the next few months and later this year, I think is going to like be a really big inflection point in like crypto like product design. Because like the way that these guys are thinking about it is like from the ground up, and not only have they started working with a bunch of cool projects, even did a little bit of work for like Monad and stuff like that. They've been, and I definitely can't share which ecosystem, but there've been some big ecosystems that we've been working on that, I think like a lot of these ecosystems right now are very like stumble upon. If you remember that back in the day where like, you go from one protocol to another, it's totally different, no uniform, no anything like that. And I think their vision for it is to be way more like, what's worked in Web 2 and like the FANG companies, which is like a much more uniform design and like branding that's kind of like liquid across no matter what app you use. And I think that will also lead to like less rugs, less like scams, a better user experience, way better onboarding and things like that too. So I think like once crypto sees this at large, this like agency within Delphi is going to become like really hot, even hotter than they have been in this like first quarter so far, because people will be like, oh shit, like when they're using that, say like XYZ new chain and say, whoa, like why does this feel so cool and different and unique? It'll be very easy to point and say, oh, that was Delphi Design's work.
Well, it's interesting. I can think of a couple of cases like Liquidity, where they like allow people to design their own front ends. But this idea of like design in its own lane, like kind of siloed away, and being able to contribute, just from that perspective, instead of like existing under something, right? Existing under a tech team or under a CEO, that like that's an exciting possibility, and I think like that'll allow this like new design, these new set of design conventions to kind of come forward.
Yeah, that's it's a great point because like, a lot of, I think some of the best teams in space really think about design, just as much as they think about product or anything like that, anything else. They kind of go hand in hand. But I think, what's cool about how the Delphi design team has been really like exploring it and thinking about it is to make it very hybrid where, of course, they want to set, some like culture within some of these ecosystems, but allow flexibility. So, if there is a protocol or a dev team that comes in and says, hey, we have our own view on design. We don't want to fucking follow this to a T. That's totally fine. But here are our design principles that we think the ecosystem should follow, and you can play around all around that. And I think that's like I'm excited to be able to like share more about that because like I've been able to see, I spend a lot of time just like, it's my favorite call within Delphi. People know is like just talking to the designers because like they're always thinking about things in like such a unique way and such a refreshing perspective.
Right.
And so I always kind of like take sneak peeks and they've been doing a lot of other cool stuff. Yeah.
That's wild. That's very cool. You kind of briefly mentioned this idea of like Delphi making like unique decisions or decisions that from an external perspective look kind of strange or maybe don't make sense. Can you take me through some examples of this? Like when in your guys' history have you taken these opinions and how is it fared for you?
Yeah, I'd say like every step of the way. When we started Delphi as a research firm back in 2018, like literally no one was paying us for research. We had like less than 5 clients, so like shout out like Multicoin, Hashed, and like Parify and Arca and stuff like that.
Right.
But like other than that, like really like no one was really paying us for this research. So at that point, that alone was like a very unique kind of path, I'd say. But like the way that we bootstrapped ourselves was doing consulting, because when we were working on these reports, one of the best and earliest engagements we ever had, which was like probably one of the first times any company's been paid by a DAO, was Synthetics back in early 2019 in February. And essentially, we wrote this really good report on them, and they were just like, "Oh, you guys understand this better than anyone. We need a lot of fucking help. There's not a lot of people who understand what the fuck we're doing.
Right.
So like, we would love to like have you guys." And that was the cool part is like we never even we were like too busy slaving away on the research side to even think that consulting could be a revenue line for us. And what was so awesome about that is like, to be honest. Myself, I come from TradFi, so I worked in Bloomberg and Deutsche Bank. I always hated consulting. I thought, there's this like really good Steve Jobs quote that I think like nails it, which is like, these people kind of come in, like make changes that kind of like impact that org's like life and then like leave after they get like a quick payday and stuff. I think in crypto consulting is actually really interesting because you can be very aligned with kind of like that outcome, have exposure and everything like that. And I think more than that for us, on the research side, you could only do or learn so much about a project until you started working with them. So, we thought we knew synthetics inside and out. Then we started working with Kane and the team. We're like, oh, fuck, there's so many problems or so many things that they've thought through that like you can't just like look at from like a white paper or like their website or their docs, right? So that was awesome. And, after that, we went on to work with like some stellar teams like, Stanny and Ave, Constantine and Lido and stuff. And like, the breadth of knowledge that you kind of get, it not only, helps you help the teams with our own kind of like takes and perspectives, but it also makes the research and kind of like our insights within the hive mind way better. So I think consulting was one path. Then, ventures kind of like was birthed also. I've talked, me and the team have talked about the venture story a lot, so I won't like, I'm sure people have seen pods where we've mentioned it. But even how that came to be was like kind of crazy. And again, like, because we were working and consulting with a lot of these projects would tell us like, hey, like, you're not basically any value-added investors in the space. You guys have added more value than basically any of our like investors, and you have basically very little exposure based off like what we give you on this consulting fee or whatever. We want you guys to get more exposure on the upside that you guys are helping create. And so ventures kind of like uniformly kind of came out of that, like once we started doing ventures, it was like amazing too because it was a whole other like I think when we had the research and consulting division, we're like, this is it. Like we have such a good lens into what's going on in fucking crypto. And then as soon as we started the ventures division, we're like, oh wait, we were so blind to this whole other side of the market, which has only become more like prevalent into like understanding what's going on in the space and where the space is headed, I'd say. And so like, it manifested in us eventually creating labs too, where we were like, all right, researching, advising, and like, investing in these things has given us such unique perspectives. We're probably missing a lot by not building. And, building was like a huge kind of like really cool part to like add on to Delphi. And I think like, I always tell people like there's no like genius strategy or anything on how we kind of ended up here. It was honestly just like myself and the other founders having like ADD and being like super like curious, right? About like getting as many hands on the elephant as possible to figure out how crypto like could evolve, how it should like develop and everything like that.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen in the space that like the founder entrepreneur to VC model has tended to be very successful. And you guys kind of were really originally, clearly originally founder entrepreneurs before investors in a lot of ways, right? And I think that, that's, to your credit, that has really influenced the way that you guys are, have had success and are perceived in the space as well.
Yeah, I'd say that like, not just the lab side is where we're building, but building a research consulting business and everything like that is like a business in itself. Obviously, VC is building a business as well, although it's like, and I definitely don't want to say it's easier at all. Everything is fucking hard. Is one thing that I'll say is like after doing all of this, there's no easy way to make money. There's no easy way to become successful or anything like that. Everything takes fucking hard work. But like, building on the research side and like, the first 2 years when we basically were like, not just bootstrapping everything with our like, being very poor, both financially as well as time wise. It just taught me a lot about how hard being an entrepreneur is. And I think that kind of like has helped us be way better value add to, the teams and portcos that we have joined because like we understand that it's like, you're just getting kicked in the balls every morning, but you have to put on like a smile on the face and like be like, everything's okay. Like not only is everything okay, everything's going as best as fucking possible. And, doing that in a market that is like so fucking cyclical and like moves so fast, it's exhausting. So like, I think that has like really kind of like helped us become what I think is like better investors.
Mm-hmm. You shouted out a couple of projects in like the early DeFi days, and that was the time that you guys were kind of cutting your teeth. Lido, Synthetics, Aave. It's crazy to imagine that these like founders were as accessible. They weren't proven at all.
Yeah,
and, like,
yeah.
And these were like, ideas that would become like the fundamental building blocks and blue chips of today. Like, do you think that there was more opportunity back then, or is there still that level of opportunity today?
Damn, yeah, that's a good question. I think there's still a lot of opportunity in this space for sure. I think back then it wasn't that there was more opportunities, it was less people going for those opportunities. And I think
Mm,
that's what's been like really the biggest flip. I also think like, obviously we were really early to Axie and help design that and everything like that. Like, and I've told this on a lot of podcasts too, like we literally could not complete that round. That round couldn't be filled. It's like the
right.
best round in
Yeah.
crypto history, but like literally could not be filled. And I think what was really cool is like we talked to a lot of our clients, talked to a lot of funds that were subscribed to us and stuff like that. And we were coming off like I guess like the highs of like Delphi DeFi innovation and everything like that. And we had some clients literally tell us like, this gaming thing is like so dumb. Focus on DeFi because that's like what you guys are good at. Like, why are you like lean into what's working? And we're like, oh yeah, but like we think this stuff is super interesting too. And I think what's Axie did is like both in a good and bad way is like there can't really be an Axie type moment again really because like in what I mean is like it caught people so off guard. And now I think after that whole gaming meta kind of like got established in the space, I think every other sector where crypto could potentially play some type of role, no matter how big or no matter how valuable it could be, gets front run because people are like, oh, like I missed Axie in gaming, so now I need to do this. So going back to what I said earlier, I think just people are chasing opportunities everywhere, even if maybe those opportunities are just what they see as like narratives that maybe don't really accrue any value.
Right. And I definitely see like funds invest in projects where they just want coverage of the narrative, right? Like, okay, we want a Bitcoin L2 or whatever. Just
Yeah.
like we're not actually personally convicted, but we have to cover our bases there. But there's still definitely non-consensus ideas in this space. Is there anything right now that you think is interesting that's kind of non-consensus?
Honestly, this is probably as consensus as it gets, but like, crypto AI, like our team on all three divisions, it's been like the first thing that all three divisions has been unanimously like curious and nerd sniped by. And obviously, again, like Delphi's been kind of like early to that trend as well. We've been like investing and like looking at that for over 18, almost 2 years now. And obviously the past 4 months they've gotten very crazy. But it is an area that I think people will still be underexposed to, no matter how bullish they are. And I think
Wild.
we, myself and the other founders, in March of last year, there was this really good paper by this like ex OpenAI worker who it was called Situational Awareness. I don't know. Did you read that?
Mm-mm.
It's really good. It's like it's 83 pages, but like he only writes on a third of the page, so it's actually like 27 pages or whatever. But basically in March, it was basically saying like, oh, AGI is coming way sooner than people think. It actually thinks like it can happen and everything like that. And obviously that's not really a hot take anymore. But I think in March of last year, no one was really talking about that. And after we all read this, we were just like, wait, like people are definitely missing this. And we're very bullish on it, but even we feel like we're going to be underexposed. So we kind of made the decision to get overexposed to that area.
Right.
Yeah.
Like how do you guys accomplish that? Because it seems like, at least from a retail perspective, there were some early projects that were kind of like exposing or allowed people to get exposure to the AI narrative. Some projects that pivoted, obviously, and then in the fall we saw the rise of like a lot of investable AI, in that it had tokens, it had liquid tokens, but it ended up being maybe a little bit of
Yeah.
vapor. Like, how are you guys able to get so much exposure, or as much exposure as you want, despite the fact that like this industry is
Yeah.
so small right now?
It's a good question. I'd say this, and that's why it was important for me to like add that context that like we want to be overexposed. And so for us, it's still so early, and for us, we were learning a lot and learning at light speed. And the way that we were making investments was basically in every part of the stack because we really didn't honestly know where value would accrue. Maybe some of us would have hot takes like, oh, inference probably doesn't get any value, but we still wanted to get exposure there and back teams that we thought if there was going to be value to be accrued there, they would be able to figure it out. And I think we did a really good job of that, like investing all across the stack. And I think that's already paid dividends, even though, of course, some of them, My Shell recently launched. We're investors in that.
Right.
That's been a really cool project. That team is like stellar. And I think like, the cool part about this is like, even though some of these have like launched and like have done well or whatever, like Grass, we are investors in as well. I think like what's interesting is like they've paid dividends by just the intellectual capital that we've been able to get from them. So there are some announcements that like maybe I could leak, but like we are working on some cool stuff. Maybe I won't leak it here yet because I just don't want to get this front runner or anything like that. But we are AI is something that we're taking way more seriously than I think people realize we are. we've been building, we've been working, we've been, Labs has already done 2 big hackathons. They just launched another accelerator now that got support from not just Solana, but also Ethereum Foundation and Base. The first time those 3 have ever worked together. So that's been like really cool. I honestly did not think Labs would be able to pull that off. Research, we've built a lot of products within our research portal that honestly I kind of hate because they're getting so much usage from our members, and I think they're not actually reading the reports. So like it's like a disadvantage and advantage. And obviously we've written a lot about that stuff. We were also consulting a few protocols. And then on the venture side, not only have we made over 18 investments in this space, but we've also developed this bot called Delphi AI that maybe you saw. We basically launched it, and essentially we've been using this for the past 8 months already, and it just keeps getting better and better and better, where people can put decks into this, and it automatically uses not just our historical research, but also all the commentary and feedback that we get from our investment memos and everything like that to come up with its own opinion, rate the project,
Wow.
kind of give like all the details and everything like that. And it's been working really well. And at the beginning of this year, we basically gave it like $1 million and said, all right, over the next 100 days, you're going to invest this for us. It's not the best at figuring out how to allocate, how much to allocate and everything yet. But it directionally, it can kind of like help us be like, all right, you should invest in these 4 projects out of these 200. So I think that's been really cool. And yeah, I wish I could share more about like, people will know when they see it. It'll be big news, I think, when we launch what we're launching. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I think like there's been a little bit of frustration from a retail perspective around AI because a lot of stuff has been in private markets, and then some of this like meme AI stuff had retail get a little bit rinsed. There was opportunity within that, obviously. How do you think a retail investor should think about getting exposure to the AI space?
Yeah, I think that's why we got excited with the intersection of crypto AI. I think it was like one of the best outlets for retail investors to get exposure.
Right.
To this
I talk about
industry.
that sometimes where it's like, okay, we have like Nvidia.
Yeah, and by the way, like everyone only talks about Nvidia, but like realistically, the Mag 7 is basically all AI companies now. I mean, it's gonna be like exactly what happened with the .com, where it's like, oh, like which ones are internet companies? Like 10, 15 years later, all of them are internet companies, right?
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people are underestimating. It's not just like which AI company is going to go public, which of course you want exposure to those. And again, is something that like, I'll talk about, on the next pod maybe. But I also think like a lot of these existing companies will just integrate AI or integrate AI solutions and probably have a lot of, not just data, but like value to be able to get more efficiently kind of like captured. So I think, retail shouldn't be that upset about missing the bags. I think you just got to like do the research and kind of like find where the opportunities are. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any, component in crypto AI that you're like not that interested in, or you think is, perhaps kind of like over indexed on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say it's too early for me to say no to anything. I'm also like a permeable. I'm probably like, I think a lot of people on our team will probably have much more detailed answers like, oh, like I hate this part. Like inferences, like one hot takes. Some people on our team also think agents are over indexed or something like that, right? Even like the whole DeFi narrative or something, because like, I think eventually that will be really useful, but I think in the near term, next 12 months, it won't be able to do that much because all of us are fucking degens. A lot of the protocols that we do want to use are new protocols and stuff that aren't going to be integrated as quickly.
Right.
So I'd say maybe those are like quick answers and stuff, but like realistically, I'd say for me personally, I think like, again, it goes back to me thinking like even the people who are bullish are going to be underexposed. I really think this stuff is going to like upend kind of like everything, how we think about any everyday products as well as these niche products like crypto.
We've seen it a little bit right now, but we might see a continued evolution here. But it's the idea that like cost to come to market or the ability to create products is coming down, right? It's becoming cheaper to build products, and we've seen some really nimble teams with
like one person,
exactly,
like
or like $100,000, right? And they build an incredible thing, $1 billion organization. You guys are scaling, your investment. So that's one side of things. You also have the lab side of things.
Yeah.
How do you think this is going to kind of disrupt both of those spaces?
Yeah, I think ventures, it will definitely make teams way more efficient. But at the end of the day, like the bot, these agents aren't going to be able to make the decisions for you. Or I think accurately assess the risk reward which I don't think any human's really going to be that good at either, right? Like it is kind of like an art and a science, I'd say. And I think AI is probably going to be really good for the science part of it, but I think the art part is just as, if not more important. So I think obviously it will be like disrupt kind of like a lot of processes and like everyday things, and like probably make a lot of these jobs easier. And hopefully, the hope is allow our team to be able to spend time on things that we enjoy doing and are more necessary to like actually do deep thinking around some of these decisions. That alone would be like a huge fucking unlock. I don't think it ends there though. And I don't think we can kind of like realistically comprehend like where it actually heads. Yeah.
And then as far as like the death of the mega round that I think some people are calling for, where they're like capital is no longer going to be scarce around AI. It's different kind of factors that will make companies huge. What do you think about that?
Yes and no. I think what's really exciting is what we were just talking about, where it's like you're going to get these teams that are less than 10 people that are able to create big businesses that get, 7 figures, 8 figures, potentially even 9 figures of ARR very quickly. I think that's fucking awesome. That's like so cool, so exciting. And I think like allows these teams to like kind of like not just ship faster, but build better products. So I think that's really interesting. I do think there are, because of like how how kind of like powerful AI can be, I think you're still gonna have these mega rounds for sure. I don't think they're going away anytime soon. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think like you're still gonna have really big visions or big ambitions that like need not just capital but a lot of people who are thinking, working, or leveraging these like these LLMs and everything like that to kind of accomplish whatever their goal is. So I think you're not I think that side of the spectrum is not going away at all, but I think this bottom end of the spectrum is going to balloon.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So that like the micro, I don't even know if there's a word for it, but like the super small team, those are gonna blow up. That's very, very cool. That's an exciting possibility, and I think Labs is really phenomenally well positioned for that. Type of
For sure, and that's why they've been like leaning in so hard here. And to be honest, I think they're like they've been talking to so many teams, and I think one thing that just talking to Luke, the CTO of Labs, just last night, and he was just telling me, man, like there's so many ass teams out there. Like he's like there's so like it wastes so much time, right? Like
Right.
it's stopping you from talking to the builders who are actually building some cool shit. But they've done a bunch of these hackathons, and every one of them they've been able to find almost like 6 to 7, 8 projects and teams that they're like, oh, this could be something big, and they don't need many more resources than what they already have. They just kind of need more guiding principles, guiding hands, and kind of like being detracted away from the mistakes, I'd say. So yeah, I'm super excited about it. I really don't have like crystal ball into the future of like how it's going to develop. I just know it's something that like our team is going to continuously be hopefully at the cutting edge of, and like be very kind of curious about.
You mentioned that you guys at Labs kind of work with maybe 15 to 20 teams a year. I think there's some kind of incubator models, accelerator models that are trying to do like an order of magnitude bigger than that, probably in the crypto space. A couple come to mind who've worked with probably hundreds of products over their kind of life cycle. Do you guys imagine you want to kind of like amplify that, or will you stick with like the high conviction?
Yeah. So what I was referring to was actually, and it still stands actually, but just to like clarify, I was talking about consulting. We work with like 10, 15 projects and everything like that.
Yeah.
And the way that it's set up is like research, ventures, labs. These are like separate businesses and everything like that. That being said, though, Labs does, this year they did these 2 kind of like hackathons and accelerators, and those have netted basically around a dozen projects, and they are doing another, so maybe it'll get up to like maybe close to 20 that they're helping out. But the cool part about it is after they do all this, they kind of lean very closely into probably like a handful, like 3 to 4, and 2 of which that were that you've probably seen out in the space have been like Legion and MetaLex. And Legion is like one of the Delphi Labs incubations, which is like making ICOs great again, like merit-based ICOs, where we have like reputation and everything. And its sister company is basically MetaLex, that I think will kind of create this really cool like long-term vision where MetaLex is like on-chain like agency, like law firm basically that Gabe Shapiro, our old GC, basically is heading up that we're helping build out. And it's really cool because he's basically doing this in like an unscalable law firm way where it's like working with DAOs or what he like. He's created this new version of DAOs called Borgs, which are like DAOs that kind of actually connect to the real world, and you don't have to actually spend all the. I think DAOs are so cool, but they spend all their time. They form to like accomplish some like ambitious vision and then spend all their time figuring out how to DAO. That's like not the best use of time, and he's trying to like kind of like fix that. And what's cool about it is he'll work on things like DAO-to-DAO partnerships, contractor agreements, kind of anything that DAOs and these Borgs need to connect to the real world, but then in a like unscalable like agency type way. But then our labs team will kind of like automate this and build this on chain, so it becomes scalable. And then we kind of use that as a feature set into Legion. So Legion's not just its launchpad; it ends up being like a Carta and everything over time too. So I always like to joke that like Legion got to over 100,000 users in 30 days, in their first 30 days. So obviously it had like insane product market fit. But I always like to joke that like, if you like Legion today, that's great because it's the worst it's ever going to be, So I'm super excited about that. And, that's a great example of like two projects that like they really leaned into. We've been working on that for almost 2 years now. So it's been awesome to see that come to market and everything like that.
So it feels like we're at a stage where part of the market is kind of like maturing in a lot of ways, maybe like some of the L1 space, and then part of it is like just getting started. Maybe AI would be an example of this. If crypto were to like 5x from here, do you think most of the kind of gains are to be, or most of the value created is going to come from like these incumbents that already exist, or is it going to come from upstarts?
Yeah, again, I'd say like a mix. I think obviously so far this cycle you've seen a huge dispersion, right? Like, and I think like one of the biggest detriments of the cycle now is like calling Bitcoin crypto. I think Bitcoin has kind of crossed that chasm and become its own kind of like asset. And I think like that's kind of hurt a lot of people's mentality within crypto, where it's a bull market for Bitcoin and these alts are getting decimated and everything like that. So I think that is like kind of important to like separate it out, and I think that will continue. As far as like alt season and everything like that too. I do think you're just going to see certain pockets have like their own alt season, but not everything kind of go up in tandem. And that being said, I think like there are a lot of cool projects that have built important tech that maybe don't get taken as seriously because maybe they're not like the hot new thing on the block anymore, but there was a reason why they were that hot new thing on the block, and they were actually working on something, very pivotal for the ecosystem. Like, Celestia is a great example where it had that crazy run up to $20, and then as soon as it dumped, people were like, all right, yeah, that tech sucks. It's like, dude, they didn't really even fucking start yet. Like that was, it's not their fault that it ran up crazy and then dumped. It's like, that was the speculation that the market kind of like did, right?
Right.
It's kind of like looking in a mirror. And I do think, a lot of our team is very constructive on TA here. And we've been, we were early investors as well as, we Can from our team wrote like the whole modular thesis like 18 months before they launched. So we've been big fans, and I think I think the next few months are going to be really cool to see that play out as far as Tia as like this DA layer. I think like Inisha, which is another thing that we're invested in. Inisha is like going to be like a big part of that too, because they're going to be using Celestia too, and I think you're going to start seeing this more and more happen, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, now I get why it ran up so much to $20. Whereas I think a lot of people in the market who are like more so traders are so focused on like, oh, what's the new shiny thing that people are going to get excited about for 2 weeks, and then let me flip that. I'm excited for, I'm very hopeful and excited that a lot of the things that people thought were dead or weren't going to return will kind of like have outsized returns and kind of like punish people that, maybe just use them for a quick trade.
Yeah. Well, it almost feels like we've seen the death of the like conviction trader.
Yeah.
Where everyone's like retail and liquid traders that are kind of running their own book are chasing like the daily runners, the pumps, and then not operating on this kind of like liquid venture model that I think was a successful model in previous cycles where people would make small liquid bets. I mean, you guys are an example of this, right?
Yeah.
But I think we've seen the market just kind of split, and it's like VCs are not actually like very bothered by the fact that there's a lot of VC sentiment because they're patient on the long-term projects anyways.
Yeah. It's a great call out. I'd say that like you see, crypto's really good at going at crazy ends of the spectrum. We'll just take it as far as we can.
Right.
And I'd say that you saw this recently in recent weeks with like Libra, like Portnoy's coin and everything like that. Is like not only were these obviously not conviction trades or anything like that, but they were like such quick turnarounds. Like I personally didn't participate in any of those. Where like like it's that chart that has like that big and kind of keeps going
Right,
down.
yeah.
And I think you kind of saw that, and I think you saw like the Libra pump last like a couple hours, whereas Trump lasted 48 hours and everything like that, and you saw it come down. And I think what again, this kind of goes back to like Celestia as an example and stuff. Like I think you're gonna need it to go the opposite way now, and I think it will kind of like expand slowly. And what I mean by that is like basically. People see this as like a 2-hour trade, but then, on the 4-hour, it like pumps even more, or goes up more, and they're like, oh, damn, I should have held that more.
Mm-hmm.
And then next time they hold it for 4 hours, and then on 8 hours, it goes up more. And like, hopefully it extrapolates where it's like, oh shit, now I should have held that for 2-3 months. Maybe that's more copium and hopium, because like, I'm way more of a, investor than a trader. But I do think that's probably like how it rebalances itself, and then we'll do the whole thing again. Crypto will never learn.
Like right now, it's EV plus EV to like dump, and we need to get back to the point where it's plus EV to hold.
Exactly. Yeah, we 100% need that. Market's killing itself if it like only stays in that dump after an hour thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Why do you think this has become like so prevalent? I guess like you're not in the like pump fund trenches. I don't know. Maybe you are. But like why has that become so compelling to retail traders when like a lot of the time they've gotten kind of wrecked on it?
Yeah, I probably don't have like any crazy answer here. I'd say that like I tie all this stuff to like attention spans just getting shorter and shorter, the TikTokification of like people's mental being. We've seen this on the research side. When we started in 2018, their readership was insane as far as complete. Like everyone was reading our 40, 50-minute reports multiple times. Now, like, we've had to like, now our reports, at the start of this year, Cedrus, our head of research, he was like, guys, we need to adapt to the market. People aren't reading these 50-minute reports other than the fucking builders and projects that we're actually covering. And, our members will like just use the summarize function, which like has been a huge hit that we, shout out, launched with Mira Network. They've been like really helpful partners for it. But realistically, I think like, like now Cedrus was just like, hey, we need to write 25-minute reports max. And, the last 3 were like one on Mega ETH we dropped was 15 minutes. One on Nisha we dropped was 20 minutes. We dropped, and, shout out to Ross, and he's leading this kind of like AI team that I'll talk about later too. But he just dropped this big, like the Bible on like judging agentic frameworks in crypto. Like I'm biased obviously, but like I think if you're interested in this stuff at all, it is like the best report that you could read. And if any of your viewers want to like DM me for it, I'll give you like I'll gift it to you. That report was 50 minutes, and we all make fun of him. We're like, dude, and he's like, this is me making it short,
Yeah.
So like I mean, going back to your question though, as far as like why has retail been doing that? It's just like I think they haven't been rewarded for belief. And I think like because of that, they kind of like, have come in to see crypto as a casino. And unfortunately, that is like the real case. Like I have a bunch of, good, like really close home friends that I've been able to get into crypto at various stages. Some were able to be nerd by like how Nexus Mutual like was like constructed way back in the day. Like they thought that was like really cool, interesting, right? Some obviously like Axion Gaming, they're like, oh, that's really interesting. Obviously DeFi and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of friends that none of those kind of spoke to them. And then last year, meme coins was just it, right? Like meme coins, like now I'm gonna download Phantom and I'm gonna use it. So it does serve a purpose. I know meme coin sentiment is like at all times lows. Really think it's like really dumb to think this stuff is going away. I know people have like been posting like the pump.fund chart of like how many coins are minted. I promise you that's gonna go back up. It's not going to zero. It's just like these attention tokens are like a way of people to invest and speculate and gamble on things that they think they can have an edge in. And I think I'm friends with Ansem, who like I think had one of my favorite quotes on this very early on. In the meme coin trenches was like in like grandparents and stuff like that, they'll play the casino where their odds are like 1 in 1 billion, right? And the cool thing about this like crypto casino, as far as like these meme coin trenches and stuff, which I personally don't play in or anything like that, but I can see why people play in it, is like there, if you see chill guy on TikTok, your chance, you can say, hey, instead of me having a 1 in 1 billion chance, maybe I have 1 in 1,000 or something like that. And I think speculation is not a bad thing. I hate that people like hate speculation. It's just like, you're in crypto because you're in crypto and you've benefited off that speculation, and now you're like on your high horse, hitting on it and everything like that. I think speculation is like a way for you to shape the world into what you think. That's how like venture investors are, at least. But even for like entertainment purposes, speculation is like useful, I'd say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting your comments on attention span, because like I grew my Twitter account as a threader. Like now the format of threads is completely dead. Maybe it's algorithmic, but I think it also has to do with like attention spans and things.
Yeah, wow. I think threads still do what do you think is the best form? Is it long post? Is it just banger tweets? Is it like threads? I think all of them have their own place, depending on what you're writing about. Like the medium is the message, right? So like, yeah.
Well, I mean, to like your guys' credit, right? I think like the reports are incredibly valuable to a subset of investor that's thinking in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think the people trading the meme coin trenches are probably reading that many Delphi reports. Yeah, as far as like format goes, I mean, my kind of conspiracy theory take on this is that like there hasn't been a lot of new retail participation. Like maybe there's a little subset that's come in, via meme coins and stuff, and like we've seen, certain corners where followings are increasing, like Phantom as an example of this. Ansem, right? He grew his account in a meaningful way. But I think like a lot of platforms, especially more like educational or fundamentals based platforms, have not grown at all, and we haven't seen like that resurgence of retail in this specific cycle, despite like
100%,
bullish conditions.
Yeah, I can totally confirm that. I'd say even our research numbers, like I think the product's done really well, but like the growth that we saw in 2021, 2022, it was just like, man, we couldn't, like our servers would go down certain days when we were like rushing in to read these reports and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally do agree with that. I'd say that like, the other thing I'd say is the percentage of conversions from the retail that is coming in that stays in crypto has also gone down, which is actually scarier to me than the other fact that maybe the amount of retail hasn't come in to the same degree.
Right.
Because your conversion rate is actually way more important. It's like, even on the research side of the business, like even in a bear market, we understand that like we're not going to get that much inbound or like that much top of funnel, but what we really focus on is making sure that our conversion percentage goes up. So when that top of funnel does return, we can convert them. I really think that percentage has kind of gone down, mostly because again, it goes back to how exhausting it is and how they're not being rewarded to believe in anything. And if you treat it as a game or anything like that, and like the game's only fun when it's like maybe on easy mode those 2-3 weeks of a year when every meme is ripping, chill guys on TikTok and everything like that, right? So yeah, it's I'd say that is probably the thing that I think crypto needs to not focus on the most, because I think like building good products, building cool stuff, showing why this technology is useful, will kind of sort itself out. But I think that is something that like people should kind of keep in mind.
I've heard some kind of rumblings that like institutional capital is kind of becoming more and more curious about the space. Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that's the funniest thing is even this past week, crypto Twitter's like echo chamber has been like, it's over. Everything's done. Like, this is so bad. The thing that they don't realize is these institutions, they're not checking CoinGecko or anything like that and seeing these things down 80, 90%. They're just looking at Bitcoin's price, and obviously that's tumbled as well. But they're looking at the fundamentals and stuff and are kind of like, all right, this is obviously not going away. We've had a ton of institutional interest, not just on the research side, but also on the consulting side, as far as like education on what we're working on and how they can kind of like get up to speed and get exposure to the space in like a meaningful way. So yeah, I think that's been like really, really cool to see.
That's phenomenal. I think that's about our time for the day. What should people check out on Delphi? Any exciting stuff going on your end?
Yeah, we always, like we're never good at being boring, I'd say. So like we always have like a lot. I'd say that like, one, if you're interested in like just, I really do think that like reading crypto Twitter like constantly every day is like the worst thing you can do for your brain. Because again, like even if you find some good tweets, you're reading so much trash. And I'd say that like if you guys and any of your listeners like actually want to sit down and read like a 20-30 minute report, I think they will get way bigger dopamine hits than scrolling through Twitter, as
Right.
well as way more alpha, way more insights. Obviously, I'm biased, but I really do believe that. So like if any of your readers are not Delphi subscribers yet, I'd say like ping me just so I can give you a report,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we can kind of take it from there. I'd say, if you're a builder, check out our labs accelerator with the Solana base and Ethereum Foundation. I think it's really cool. That's going to be I don't know when this is going to come out, but we're accepting applicants and stuff right now. And then obviously, if you're a builder that is looking for funding and stuff, reach out for the venture side. So yeah, any of the above. Like I was saying before we kind of started recording, it's like at Denver at this conference, like I have real no MO because like I feel like I get like 5x leverage on my time where, no matter who I'm talking to, there's probably some way, shape, or form that Delphi can hopefully be helpful.
Excellent. Well, Anil, thanks so much for your time. It's
Yeah, I
always a
appreciate it,
pleasure.
man. Yeah.